With the fandom back on the rise, it seems like the perfect time to discuss the film series that has inspired our love and fear of dinosaurs since the early 90s. The idea of bringing prehistoric beasts back to life is a tempting idea, but with money changing hands and the public being put in danger, who comes out as having the best intentions, and who is out only for themselves no matter what the cost? And let's be real, it's tough to keep your morality upright when you and the guy next to you are trying to outrun a velociraptor. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and we were so preoccupied thinking about if we could make this episode that we never considered if we should. This is Jurassic Park and World: Good to Evil. Now, there are a lot of people shown throughout the film series, so we're only going to discuss the core characters, or the ones who did something memorable, either by being heroic or dastardly.
Life, finds a way.
As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure characters and working our way down. These characters are the good. And starting out, our gold medal of good goes to Dr. Ian Malcolm. Criticized in the first movie for being a flashy celebrity, he was one of the most level-headed characters in the series. He had called that the dinosaurs would be able to create offspring and stated the idea of the park was a bad business plan from the beginning. In the second movie, he faced the island again, only to go and make sure his girlfriend at the time would be able to return safely. Though during Lost World, he had a slight rivalry with Nick, he still respected the man when Nick helped save Sarah and Kelly. He returned during the second Jurassic World movie, insisting on letting the now active volcano claim the lives of the remaining dinosaurs on the island. Throughout his time dealing with the madness created by Hammond, he did do a great job keeping a level head and ultimately saved a lot of people, including his own daughter. He also delivered one of the best monologues that really dug into the morality of science and playing God, making him one of the most insightful characters in the series.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
The silver medal for good goes to another recurring face in the franchise, Dr. Alan Grant. Not much of a fan of kids or being in hazardous situations, he is an incredibly capable scientist. He makes his mark in the first film, saving Lexi and Tim multiple times from T-Rex and Velociraptor attacks, and his idea to use a road flare to distract the Tyrannosaurus Rex is reused by Claire in the first Jurassic World, but we'll get to her later. He returns in the third film, tricked onto the island by some concerned parents trying to find their son. He put his life at risk to save the group, using his skills to fight through the dangerous terrain. Dr. Grant has all sorts of character traits that are associated with heroism. He is both brave and intelligent and is more than capable of keeping a level head in stressful situations.
Nobody move a muscle.
Which happen a lot. I mean, getting chased by dinosaurs is about as stressful of a situation that I can think of. He uses his brains and cool demeanor to outsmart any man or dino that comes his way. And although he has a bit of a rough exterior at times, he's there to put his own life on the line to protect those that need saving. For our bronze medal of good, we have to place the most heroic face in the Jurassic World films, Owen. Not to be confused with Nick Van Owen, who we'll get to later on. The only man who can claim to be a raptor alpha without actually being a raptor. He has more than a few great moments. There is a lot of long-winded tension between him and Claire, but it's easy to forgive when he rides through the jungle to hunt for a genetically modified new dino.
It's killing for sport.
And you have to give him credit, he spoke out against dinosaurs being used for warfare and stepped up to save Claire's nephews. Owen is a very confident man who, like Alan Grant, is willing to be the protector when called upon, even in the face of hungry dinosaurs. Most importantly, he has a very strong sense of justice and is highly empathetic when it comes to wildlife. Next, we're placing Ellie Sattler, the first film's paleobotanist. She was shown as a love interest for Grant, and despite her excitement to see living dinosaurs, she shared Grant and Malcolm's concern for safety. She helped protect the children from attacks in the first film, aided a sickly Triceratops, and went with Muldoon to restore power to the park. She even makes an appearance in the third film, being the one Grant calls for help. Ellie is adventurous and loyal with a sense of humor and overall kind heart, and like Dr. Alan Grant, is willing to put herself in danger to help others. From Jurassic World, we'll throw in Barry here next. Owen's friend, he helps care for velociraptors at the park. He also has the foresight and intelligence to tell Hoskins that these creatures could not safely be used for military purposes. He drives an ATV on the raptor hunt and is the first to realize that the raptors are communicating.
They're communicating.
Overall, another brave and competent guy. A quick shout out to John Ray Arnold, best known as the chain-smoking Samuel Jackson who wants you all to hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butt.
Really, he's just a good, competent engineer who just wants everything to work out in the park. He uses a level head to offer advice to Hammond, but ultimately is killed by a velociraptor off-screen. Hopefully, his family got a nice settlement from the company. We'll briefly mention Eddie from Lost World. He was one of the people sent by Hammond to stop the hunting of the dinosaurs and aided Ian to find Sarah. He helped to keep Kelly safe and gave his life to save Sarah, Nick, and Ian from a falling bus. It's sad to lose such a good character. Getting ripped apart by two T-Rexes is a hell of a way to go. Next is Eric Kirby. He's the young boy from the third film, having ended up on the island alone after his mom's boyfriend decided it was the perfect place to take the boat for a spin. He survives through wit and having read some of Grant's work, adapting to the harsh environment. He's one of the few characters in the third film to have some level of sense. It was a tough call, but we're gonna place Claire here next. She certainly came around by the end of the first Jurassic World, but she was not the best for a good portion of the movie. She came off as arrogant, self-absorbed, and way too concerned with her own success, to the point where it seemed like she didn't care about anything else, including family. We will hand it to her, she faced her fear to save her nephews with the help of Owen. Not everyone would be able to keep driving with a raptor head busting through the window, or running away from a T-Rex wearing heels. She isn't the most likable character, but she did come through, even though she was the one to go against Owen originally and agree with her boss to not evacuate the island, which is kinda bad. That said, in the sequel, we see that Claire feels genuine guilt over her actions in Jurassic World. She forms the Dinosaur Protection Group, made up of activists and former employees, and attempts to save the dinos.
How many can you save?
In the sequel, she's shown to be a warmer and more empathetic person, as well as a willingness to protect the young girl she barely knows. We'll mention Zia and Franklin since they were an aid to our heroes in Fallen Kingdom. They don't do very much, but are given some personality. Zia took the time to save Blue, leading the surgery, and Franklin was the hacker that made it so he and Claire could escape. So basically the sidekicks that everyone would want. Zia even used Blue to help her and Franklin get away from the mercenaries when caught in the lab later. Now, with the good characters out of the way, we now enter the neutral territory. This is the gray area. Nick Van Owen is next. He was a videographer hired by Hammond and states he is a saboteur. This is where his morality comes into question. Now, he does some great stuff. He saves Kelly and Sarah, he sets aside his attraction to Sarah to aid Ian and be able to team up, and he expresses he doesn't wish to see any dinosaurs used as attractions in a city where they could hurt people. He was even gutsy enough to be the one to unstake the baby Rex and carry it into the RV where it could be mended. But his sabotaging of the hunter's weapons in camp did result in the deaths of at least 2 men, so win some, lose some. Next we have Robert Muldoon. He had to witness the death of one of his men within his first few minutes. Later on, he aids Ellie, helping her get to the power and trying to keep the raptors at bay. And he loses his life helping to protect her. Too bad, since he was one of the few capable of recognizing they were being stalked by the creatures.
Because we're being hunted.
Next is Sarah Harding, Ian's love interest in the second film. She was eager to accept a chance to study life on the island after Hammond's invitation. But unfortunately, she resembles Claire a lot in personality. She gave little to no consideration to what her loved ones would think of her dangerous profession, and didn't seem to act empathetic to any degree when she saw Kelly stowed away on the trip.
I love you. I just don't need you right now.
Lowry earns the next spot for his acts in Jurassic World. First off, who didn't appreciate this guy to some degree?
I understand people died, it was terrible, but that first park was legit.
With his merchandise, toy dinosaurs, and enthusiasm for the original park, he is the voice of all those who have been in love with the series since the beginning. Now he's one of the few that realize the danger of the park and takes his job seriously despite his childlike wonder. He stays behind to help save the remaining people, placing their safety before his fear. We're gonna place the kids from the first movie, Lexi and Tim, together. Grandchildren to John Hammond, they show to be quite a bit of trouble. Tim is very fascinated by paleontology, but his sister is more invested in computers and hacking. They come around as the film progresses, but make plenty of bad choices before they start to catch on. Some of the stuff they do is frustrating, between Lexi attracting the T-Rex to the vehicle with a flashlight, and Tim holding on to an electric fence when the power was restored. But ultimately, they helped to escape from the threat, with Lexi using her hacking experience to be able to secure the building. Kelly Malcolm, Ian's daughter, is next. A stowaway to the island, she's a rebellious teen who comes across as unsure of her place in the world. She expresses that she isn't close to people and tries hard to make some sort of relationship with her father, hence why she decided to sneak along to begin with. She shows to have some capability, stating that a baby T-Rex crying will attract bigger creatures, and even takes out a raptor with her gymnastic ability. Next up, we have more kids, with Zach and Gray being ranked together. Brothers featured in the first Jurassic World, they follow the typical stereotype: eager to learn younger brother with a lot of energy, and the wannabe cool, maybe had an emo phase older brother who doesn't want to lose his mind over living history.
What do you think's gonna happen from you just staring at them?
Nephews to Claire, they are eventually caught up in the madness, and that's where their character actually starts to come through. Zach steps up as a protective sibling, helping to save Gray and escape from a Spinosaurus and smacking away a raptor. Billy was a presence enough in the third film to earn some sort of mention, though there isn't much to say about him. He was meant to work for Grant and just used the opportunity to be on the island so he could steal dino eggs for cash. He ultimately redeems himself by saving Eric though, which definitely earns him back some points. Donald deserves at least a mention on this list. You all might know him best as the lawyer who was eaten by a dino while on the toilet, and the second official kill of the series. He was simply a man of business who, while his initial concern was safety, was swayed by the glamour of the idea and the money. He was the only one who agreed with Hammond that this was a worthwhile attraction, even when he complained the whole way there that Hammond only had 48 hours to convince him Jurassic Park was a good idea. Now, Donald wasn't evil, but he kinda got what he deserved for putting money above safety and supporting a business run on giant reptiles. Next, we're gonna place Paul and Amanda Kirby. Eric's parents, they're the ones from the third film that trick Grant into returning to the island. They set up a lie that they only want to go for an anniversary for some excitement, only revealing that they really wanted to go to find their son. And they're divorced and unsure how to feel about each other now, because for some reason that's essential to the plot. Their method of getting Grant to return to the place that likely gave him PTSD was shady as hell. Not to mention Amanda losing even more points because it was her now deceased boyfriend that drug Eric to the island in the first place. She basically let all these problems occur, and does not make the situation any better as the film goes on.
What's a bad idea?
But Paul isn't much better because he doesn't seem to understand the severity of the situation any more than she does. He has no leadership skills whatsoever. Between having these two as parents and a former reckless, almost stepdad, it is amazing Eric survived as long as he did. Now we arrive at the dark side of the morality spectrum. These characters have more than their fair share of sins, starting with the bad and working our way to the most evil. If there's one thing that Simon Masrani taught us, it's that money will let you get away with a lot. Supposedly the 8th richest man in the world, he shares many of Hammond's eccentric personality traits. His incredibly naive outlook is what led to the creation of the Indominus Rex. Interestingly enough, he toes the line between idealist and corporate villain. He's a dreamer and a schemer who almost seems schizophrenic. Whatever his intentions are, he's responsible for quite the tragedy, and thus we place him on the lower end of the evil scale. Now we have Commander Vic Hoskins. Simply put, Hoskins is a very arrogant and manipulative guy who decided to take advantage of an absolute catastrophe. He kinda seems to represent the evil military cliche and is proud of it, as his goal was to steal hybrid embryos for military use. He seems to be willing to lose lives as long as he gets what he wants in the end. Definitely not somebody you'd trust or want to cross. Hoskins was someone who believed that war bred greatness, and looked down on some of the more nerdy tech staff at the park. His love of war and conflict seems to be manifested in his fascination for violent, dangerous animals, and his obsession to control them, which ultimately didn't work out too well for him. That said, his line of thinking when it came to using velociraptors on the battlefield, although ridiculous, is actually kind of understandable. He states that using them in the place of soldiers would save American lives, which makes sense.
Some people think that robots are the future.
Not that it would work, but the motivation behind it. And he did seem to be visibly bothered watching his own men ripped apart by raptors. Lastly, his little backstory about saving a wolf pup is actually pretty nice, so perhaps there's a little good deep down in there. Moving down the evil scale, we have Roland and his crew from Lost World. Their whole purpose was to grab dinos to sell to a zoo, using the attraction to become rich. Not only did they put the rest of the team at risk, but they eventually tried taking out Hammond's team and committed animal cruelty. They used the young to lure out the parents, they resorted to nets, guns, and whatever else, and showed no mercy towards one another. It's difficult to rank one guy in this group worse than the others, so for that reason we've put them all together. None of them had good intentions. Next up is Dodgson. Dodgson, we have Dodgson here. Nobody cares. He was the head of research at Biosyn. He's the one who gave the shaving cream can to Dennis with the mission to steal dinosaur embryos from Jurassic Park. His motivations aren't entirely clear, but given his shady nature and what he's having Dennis do, he's definitely a bad guy.
Dodgson! We've got Dodgson here! See, nobody cares.
We're gonna place Wheatley and his mercenaries next. We won't go into too much detail since they're essentially clones of Roland and his crew in the second Jurassic Park. What sets them apart is that they were much more successful in their betrayal, shooting Blue, tranquilizing Owen, and leaving Claire and Franklin to die. He was much more to the point on how to get things done. Overall, he's a cruel and greedy man, and his hobby of collecting dinosaur teeth and claws would eventually end with those teeth and claws ripping into him. Good riddance. Eli and Eversol are the characters who hired Wheatley in the first place. They not only auction off dinosaurs, neglecting any danger that may ensue, but Eli took the evil cake, suffocating Lockwood with a pillow to be sure no one would be in his way. And he locked his daughter away when she overheard his plans, despite her being in more trouble, unable to escape on an island full of hungry creatures that could rip her apart. Our bronze medal of villainy has to go to the creator of the original Jurassic Park attraction, John Hammond. We've already mentioned his grandkids, so we'll use them as evidence of his ranking. Not only did this man decide to bring prehistoric beasts back to life, willing to ignore safety concerns and saying their procedures in effect are, quote, good enough, but the man invites his grandkids into the middle of it all. When Lexi and Tim were traumatized by the events and nearly killed, Hammond still let a team go back and try to help the remaining dinos, even though he himself admits the island is now covered with them. This guy has a great charisma, but he is likely insane to some degree. Although he's more concerned about the safety of his dinosaurs than his crew and family seemingly, and his darker side is revealed on and off throughout the film.
We're talking about a calculated risk.
We will say that his motives aren't greed in the traditional sense, as he quickly shuts down the idea of overcharging for admission to his park, saying that everyone should have the right to attend. But he's definitely a bit mad with power and has problems with his ego or narcissism. You're likely wondering who could be seen as more reckless or selfish than the man who had the idea to bring dinosaurs back to life. Well, for this spot, we have none other than Newman, or, Dennis. Now, what makes him worse than Hammond? We're glad you asked, but where do we start? He's an egotistical and disgusting guy who gladly annoys and disgusts his co-workers and boss. He blames everyone else for his life choices, and his desire to gain more money leads to him stealing samples from the park and cutting off all power to make a quick escape. Honestly, what kind of person thinks it's a good idea to steal dinosaur embryos to sell to a genetics company? On top of all that, his computer hacking is responsible for everything that goes wrong. as it sends Jurassic Park into turmoil. He got what he deserved, being hunted in the rain before he could make that sweet dough. But that didn't fix the mess he created. If Dennis hadn't been such a rotten guy, the events that occurred would likely not have happened. Finally, our gold medal of evil is going to go to Henry Wu, who works to take Hammond's place as the leader of this operation. In the original movies, he was merely a scientist working under Hammond and helping to make the man's vision a reality. In Jurassic World, he is the head honcho. He comes up with the genetic coding for any new dinosaur the park would like to use as an attraction, and it was his work that created the soon-to-be hunted Indominus Rex. It's pretty simple to see why he's evil. He had been there since the very beginning and saw all the chaos caused by this poor business plan, and instead of pulling the plug on it, he decided to throw in a few more Mickey Mouse security measures and say, good enough. Hammond was responsible for getting some people killed, but Wu, your bad call got what looks like hundreds killed.
All of this exists because of me.
And you already knew this was a bad idea because we saw this happen once before. Not to mention bailing with your money in Jurassic World and giving the okay to use the DNA for military use. But what do you think? Do you agree with our ranking? Let us know. Make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.